them and doom them to be swallowed whole by an owl? That ain't right.
So Neil sets up the premise where if you're someone who doesn't want to kill animals and you have an animal that you've captured, do you release it into the wild? He points out that if you release it into the wild, statistically it will die a very short life compared to what it could in captivity due to an owl, fox, or some other predator. And leaves the implication up to the audience that it seems contradictory for someone who doesn't want to kill animals to release one out in the wild, and should instead keep it in their home as like some kind of pet or steward, or just let it be continuing living in their basement or their walls. Rhetorically, Neil does leave this up to the audience to kind of come to a conclusion, and I don't think Neil is suggesting that anyone keep mice in their house. I doubt Neil follows this. I think Neil is trying to point out that people who don't want to harm animals are hypocrites, and that if they have an animal in their house and they release it, they've doomed it to a death sentence. But that kind of overlooks a lot of things and also makes a lot of implications, which we're going to go through right now. So to run through the options of what happens if you have a mouse in your house, you can A, kill it, which makes you no better than an owl. B, keep it inside your domicile. Or C, release it back into the wild where it might get killed by an owl. Option B of keeping it in our domicile implies that also every time we come across a prey animal out in the wild, say like a turtle crossing the road, does that mean I have to take it home and protect it in my own domicile? Because after all, the inaction of letting it out in the wild would mean that it would die a shorter lifespan to predators, just like the mouse that I found in my house. Does this also mean that everything that enters the threshold of my house, I am now the guardian of, that I now have to take ownership over and protect? Ultimately, what Neil is suggesting is that if you have the ethos that you shouldn't kill animals, that if you come across an animal, you need to become the guardian of that animal. And that is not what veganism or vegetarian is about. And also, it's a very misguided attempt at pointing out some kind of internal contradiction. So if you capture a mouse and you decide to release it, you've effectively not become a predator. Your action is not going to harm the mouse directly. The rest of its life is not up to you. You do not have to be the guardian of it, but you did decide not to kill it then and there with an instant kill trap. You effectively removed harm out of your actions. So to Neil's point, if you're going to release something, you should release it safely. You shouldn't release it into an open field. You shouldn't release it into a snake pit directly, because obviously those things increase its risk of harm. What you're going to want to do is find a nice, safe place for it to have some ability to establish itself into its new environment. Additionally, you're going to want to find out where it was nesting in your house originally to make sure there are no baby mice there, because they won't be able to fend for themselves. So you're going to want to move them all over as a cohesive unit to whatever new environment you're bringing them to. You're going to want to move them 5 miles out from your house at the very least to make sure they don't return. And that'll make sure that they find a new place to live and that you haven't induced any harm on your side. Lastly, remember that your actions are your actions and the actions of an owl are not yours. So there's some middle ground between keeping it forever and instantly unaliving it. Just make sure that you're trying to minimize harm and maximize your own security.